boy, BaseDaKid, and Pugilist. Boy, it don't get no realer than this. Thanks for everyone for tuning in. Tony, how you feeling?
Yeah, hi, I'm good, brother. I'm blessed to be here. I'm super excited about this pod. You know, we've been meeting up on the Undefeated podcast with KG and Travis, to whom, you know, we have the utmost respect and grateful
Much
thanks.
respect.
And it's going to be a good show. Let's get into it.
Let's go. What's first on the topics?
And it's going to be... So, let's talk about the breakdown from the last weekend's action. It was actually an amazing weekend of boxing. Boxing right now is on a high. We've seen some high-level stuff, but what a fight we had! An instant classic. In definitely in terms of UK fights. Mick Conlan, Irish Mick Conlan, against Leigh Wood from Nottingham. Talk to me, Base. What were your thoughts?
Boy, I mean, look, I was there. So for anyone who hasn't checked out on my channel, so just to set the scene, right? From the Kiva and the Jarko fight, he was taking a bit long to finish his food. The crowd got a bit restless, especially the Nottingham lot, because obviously he's Irish. So they started doing their chants, singing their songs, basically just trying to drown him out, not even focus on what he's doing. The Irish then jumped back, and it was a whole call and response type situation. The energy was live. The two of them, as they was making their ring walks, I don't know if it's showed on the zone broadcast, but there was Irish fans like throwing their flags at Leigh Wood when he was walking towards the ring because they was right on the floor. You had them, I saw them throwing drinks after him. Like he had to tune out all the noise because he was right in the heart of Irish country at that point. It was an amazing atmosphere.
Excellent. I mean, I messaged you just before on our WhatsApp group because the energy sounded mad loud in the crowd just prior to the fight. Obviously, the Zone do a great job of, bringing the energy into the arena, using their visuals and the music. Mm-hmm. You know, it just sounded like it was properly full up. Although
I didn't see an empty seat. I didn't see one empty seat by the time the main event started.
That's what I was going to say. I mean, just in the prior bout, we saw a couple of takes from the crowd. We could see some empty seats, but I could imagine that when that main event, when those guys walked in, that arena was full to the brim.
Yeah, they just used that fight to go get their drinks. They was taking the break like real. That's all they was caring about. So they was all out getting food and drink ready for the main event. Trust me.
Okay, so let's talk about the fight. Wow, I mean, it was kind of like a battle of two protagonists because we have the boxers themselves, but what we also saw is a back battle between the trainers.
Yeah. And the crowd. It was like a 3-on-3. It was the trainer, the crowd, everything on this side, trainer, crowd, everything on that side. That's how it was structured, literally.
Yeah. So I'm going to be honest and give you my opinion of this fight going into it.
Okay.
I believe that Leigh Wood would be really strong through the stretch, especially towards second half of the fight. But my belief was that Mickey Conlan would have built up sufficient rounds in the bag early on with his boxing capabilities that he would have won on points.
Okay.
I did not foresee knockdown, and I certainly didn't see stoppage. But I had Mickey Conlan going into this fight as my slight favourite as a technical boxer, obviously two-time Olympian. This was going to be a close fight, but I saw Mickey Conlan as the eventual winner. What was your prediction on the fight prior to them getting in the ring?
Yeah, so I was supposed to go up there and do a video, but I had mad data issues. So literally, I wouldn't have got the video downloaded until today, probably at the rate it was moving up there. But my prediction was actually for Leigh Wood to win by knockout, sort of late, purely because looking at sort of Mick Conlan's recent run. Like he started off so slick, so smooth that you could tell that he was just a boxer through and through. But the way how he it almost felt like he regressed, like he wasn't taking the big step up fights. He was going through the motions, and he's like it seemed like he was just getting worse in sort of his last few fights. So even though I knew the talent was there, I was like, he looks a bit lazy. He doesn't look like he's really up for it. So I just thought that overall, would basically kind of almost out muscle and out hustle him sort of, throughout the fight. So obviously Conlan will have a lot of the slick stuff, but moving forward, you get like you would see sort of Leigh would apply that pressure, and then basically do very similar to what he did to Kanzu. That's how I saw the fight going down, like in my mind.
Yeah, I just remember some housekeeping because it's our first show. I forgot to big up the defeaters in the Discord. So let me just quickly run through who's in the house. Travis J,
big up,
October Red,
salute.
But my name Wale, yes.
Wale.
Big man like Mulla, White Tony, yes. White Tony bringing the heat. Toby Akinola, Osborne, the man, yes.
Joyce.
North Bank Bren, yes, Bren.
Woo.
Emma S, Joseph Frimpong, Kuda, all in the house. Welcome, guys.
Listen, unfortunately, we have Panit there as well.
Danny Glover from Fight Fan.
Man like Danny.
Yeah. Matt Tasty and Chips, Uncle Jonah. Stay blessed. Yeah. Thank you so much, guys, for tuning in.
Sorry, guys, we ain't got the soundboard, but
Yeah.
But yeah, so like going back to that fight now. So one thing that basically I was looking at, we watched it a little earlier on today. I didn't get through the whole thing, but the thing with Mick Conlan going from that southpaw stance, I noticed how the way he was when he was inching forward towards Leigh Wood to sort of let off his jab to go over the top of Leigh Wood's jab. He wasn't even like taking his foot off the ground. He was literally sliding his foot forward, and I'd never actually seen that technique sort of done like that before. And he kept his base like super wide, so that it's almost like he was digging his heels and his toes into the ground to land those big overhand lefts. And the way they was coming from a very unorthodox type angle. Normally you have your hand up and you do a big swing, or you go to the body, but he was literally throwing it like someone who almost never thrown a shot before. But the way he was throwing it was so unorthodox. It was like it couldn't miss, and it was effective pretty much every time.
Yeah. So I'm gonna tell you, me being the historian here, of the fighter that used to fight with that low center of gravity, feet very close to the ground, sweeping in, as you said. The guy's name is Donald Curry. Donald the Cobra Curry. Was originally touted as the next great after Sugar Ray Leonard. Obviously, he came a cropper to our very own homeboy, Lloyd the Ragamuffin Man Hunnigan. But yeah, I mean, that style, very low crouch, feet close to the ground, not up and down so much. But I very much agree with your take on his technique. He used an interesting jab technique, which was low hand and crouching down like he's gonna throw the jab to the body, but then throwing it in a very upward motion to the chin.
Yeah. And Leigh Wood he couldn't deal with it. It's weird. You would expect after getting hit with it like numerous times that some adjustment would be made, whether you go further, whether you stay further on the outside, because he is a slightly taller guy. I think he's supposed to have the taller reach as well. So whether you stay on the outside, whether you decide to circle off a bit more to your right and sort of stay away from that killer left hand, it was weird how he just basically stayed central in front of him the whole time, especially in those first couple of rounds when he was actually getting tagged and getting hurt, when he wasn't used to taking the shots.
Yeah. It looked like he just didn't have an answer for what Conlan was coming with in terms of the herky-jerky movement up and down. Yeah, as I said, that jab that was coming from a body shot angle and coming up through the guard like an uppercut traditionally would do, but from a length. And then, of course, he catches him with that overhand swinging left hand. He just wasn't able to adjust his game plan through the early rounds to adjust anything that Conlan was throwing.
Nope.
You know, and then of course, you know, at the end of the first round, the knockdown. I mean, let's talk about that knockdown.
You
That
know,
was
I'll tell you
flat.
about that knockdown. I'll tell you about that. Like I was filming. Like obviously, sometimes I'm in the crowd. Like to get like a nice little footage for myself. And obviously, I never really thought, yeah, that's gonna happen so early in the fight. So I'm filming, and then I hear like the klaxon going off for the last thing. I'm like, okay, well, I'm trying to conserve some battery, so I turned off my phone. As soon as I turned off my phone, bang, he's out on the floor. I've got my brethren right beside me, grabbed my arm, looked at me like mouth open, like, oh, and I'm like, I missed it. Like, I just turned my phone off. Guy was laughing at me. I couldn't believe it. Like, so yeah, it was just amazing. So literally just having it play in my mind, like it was just repeating in my mind for that whole minute. I was like, wow. And then I thought to myself, okay, you know what? I can't miss anything else because this fight's gonna end within the next 2 rounds. That's how I felt. So like, nope, everything has to get recorded from then on.
Yeah.
And boy, the second round definitely didn't disappoint. But what was your thoughts on how basically he left himself wide open for that looping left?
So I could see that shot because he's got a guard which is forward of his face. And what Conlan is doing is he's showing body shot. You know, this is a typical Canelo Alvarez move. He's showing body, and he's setting that trap. Yeah. He's throwing the jab low, coming up through the guard into the chin. And then it kind of lets you drop your hands thinking everything's coming from low. So because everything's coming from low, my hands can be a little bit further forward and it entices you. And I'm like, he's there for the overhand. But what I didn't see was that the length was, because what he had done is he was throwing a couple of them, but he was too far away. So one of the things that I'm a very keen judge of is looking at guys' footwork. And Mickey Conlan has great footwork. You know, he has the ability to move in, connect, do the job, slip out. And that's what his game's always been about. He's a technically gifted boxer, obviously, as I said, 2-time Olympian, 1-time bronze medal winner. He's got the skills, he's got the fundamentals to go in, hit, not be hit, and step away. Obviously, Leigh Wood is not as easy as that. But what I could see from that first round was he was setting that. And if he could get his feet into the right area, he would be able to reach over his forward guard and connect. And that's exactly what happened.
So when he went down, the way he went down, did you think at that point it's over? Or do you think no, because the bell's coming, he might recover? How did you feel?
I mean, it looked like it's what you call a pancake. Because he falls flat, both arms behind up in the air, like what the, and then he recovers slowly, and you're like, is he gonna get counted out here on his feet? You know, because the referee does have the option. He could count the guy out if he doesn't feel he's ready. I was 50-50. I was like, wow, even if he gets through this, he's finished. The next round, he's getting knocked out because that looked like a proper, resurrection job. Tyson Fury, Wilder kind of resurrection job. So I was very, very surprised.
And I was I gotta say, I was kind of I was impressed by how quickly he got up. Shout out to G-Man Boxing, big channel. Anyone who hasn't subscribed to him, definitely go subscribe. He does amazing work. So when he hit the ground and he was out cold, almost. He was almost like he was stiff, but then he jumped up within like a second. So I was like, oh wow, so he might actually be okay. But yeah, I definitely think the fact it was at the end of the round is what basically saved him in that instance, because even if it was 30 seconds left, I don't think he would have survived.
So Danny Glover says it's a George Groves moves. Adam Booth is teaching Conlan that move from George Groves. And yeah, you're right, Danny. That definitely held some typical Adam Booth type of techniques. In fact, David Haye would also have done the same thing. Crouching low, using that long lever of a left jab. Obviously, it's a right jab in Conlan's case. But yeah.
So let's talk about quickly. Okay, so let's go to the second round. Just to sort of set the scene, because that was the only other, like, apart from the last one, that was the only other really impactful and, you know, sort of conclusive one where you could say, oh, like everything here is just going all wrong. Now, obviously, with Leigh Woods come out, and he still looks, his eyes look clear, but his body doesn't. Like his body's not moving correctly from what I was watching. But I could see that he was mentally tuned in. He wasn't dazed or anything. And sort of he started again, like sort of trying to be on his jab and trying to sort of, but he was trying to throw heavy shots to the body, and he was trying to sort of just throw one hit of quitters, like just heavy shots. And it felt like he was it's almost like he was rushing it, thinking, damn, if I don't do anything, if I don't do this right now, all of a sudden, like, my chance is gone, or it's going to be a wrap for me. Lo and behold, he gets hit with the same shot again, takes that one, but then about 5 seconds later, hit with the same shot again. This time he buckled to the point. Conlan was kind of rushing his work a little bit, but having said that, he still remained composed just enough, like, so that he was actually getting off some good shots. But Wood, his clinch game was amazing in terms of like survival. Like he tied up on a different level that night. He was not dropping again.
Yeah. So, you know, for any guys that want to learn about how you survive that kind of scenario in a boxing fight, that's exactly what you do. You know, he used the ring well. He moved when he needed to move. He used a good defense to shield himself and basically buy himself that second round. He knew he was on wobbly legs. We could see, you know, every time he got touched, it just looked like the legs weren't quite solid enough, but he was clear of mind enough to know, I could take one shot, but you're not getting a second one. And that's what Conlan's looking. He's looking at a 1-2. He's looking at, I've got to hit you one and I've got to hit you the second one. And he was just not getting that second one off. Leigh Wood did a really great job of covering up and, you know, using a clinch to his benefit.
So if we look at sort of how the rest of the fight kind of went, if we just sort of quickly summarize it, because obviously we don't want to spend a huge amount of time on just that, but it was a classic tale of essentially after the third round, Conlan, his work rate dropped a little bit. Like he was always on more of the countering and the picking shots, but it dropped a little bit because he put in a lot of effort in the second and the third round, especially. Now, when Wood was weathering that, he was basically managing to sort of step into Conlan's range to prevent him from getting full extension. So at that point, while he's doing that, he's making it he's basically sort of, he's in the clinches, they're both sort of grappling and punching, dirty boxing, but anytime Conlan is basically using the ropes to try and catch breathers, and because he's got a pretty good defense, he felt comfortable enough to be able to slip shots, like roll underneath all of that, and be able to sort of avoid any sort of heavy shots that was coming. And to be honest, the majority of them landing on the gloves anyway. To be fair to him, obviously the cut that he got was from a clash of heads, it wasn't from a shot, so he was pretty evasive pretty much all night. But Wood just kept him. Anytime he got on the ropes, he flurried him. The shots, you could hear them, like you could literally hear them, like every one of them was a thudding, cracking shot. And Leigh Wood's got a massive gas tank. That was what impressed me, to throw the power shots that he did all night and not actually slow down like that. So that was what impressed me, going up towards sort of like the 10th and obviously getting to the 11th. Now, yeah, me personally, like I was there, I looked at it, it was like a shot partially was on the glove. It was mainly the glove, a little bit touched, but his feet slipped. Everyone kind of saw it slip, but they ruled it a knockdown. So I think that was basically the turning point in the fight. Because prior to that, obviously, well, Wood was coming back into it, but if you put up the graphic of just like the punch stats real quick. So like Wood was coming back, but Conlan was still still basically in there and controlling things. That knockdown changed everything, because at that point you got to look to say, okay, I'm on away soil right now. I'm in another guy's backyard. He's the champion, so I can't even afford to coast this last round and get screwed, because we all know there is a chance that can happen. Hometown cooking, hometown fighter can get a decision. And yeah, so I think that is what made him go into that last round and just start like trading and say, all right, you know what, I need to try and win this fight conclusively. Even if I can't knock him out, I need to show that I'm active so that this round becomes mine as well. Because he was, I feel like he was winning that 11th before the knockdown, personally.
Yeah. So I want to raise your attention to round 8, because that to me was that was the turnaround round for me. Because if you look at the punches landed, the punch stats for round 8, it's the first round where Wood outscores Conlan 18 shots to 15. And to me, I recognize that in the fight, because that was the round where he bit on his gum shield and said, I ain't backing up, bro. I'm in here to take you into the trenches. You know, we're going into dark places. And he started throwing some bad intention straight shots at that point. And it just, it appeared to me that, yeah, you know, this was going to be, you know, a real battle going into the second half of the fight. Clearly, Leigh Wood had decided, you know, look, you know, there's only one way back into this fight. I've lost half the fight. I have to get myself back in a position. And he started throwing some bad intention shots. We saw a bit more clinching because he started throwing them shots. And obviously, Conlan has been trying to get the knockout all the time before. He's now beginning to sap with the energy levels.
Yep. Definitely. So all of that, as you said, so that was where the sort of the momentum started to switch. But Conlan did well in sort of not so much negating everything, but he slowed it down to a point where it wasn't conclusively going all of Wood's way. Because as the punch that showed in the 11th round, like Conlan landed about 25 punches to Wood's, I think it was like 17 or some, or like 12 or something. So he was actually, or it was 22 to like 15. So it showed that he was actually in control of that round. And then all of a sudden, next thing you know, boom, like there's the flash knockdown, slip happens, and then that changes the mindset going into the last round. But yeah, let's talk about that last round. I want to talk your perspective of how you saw the knockout and what you saw on the TV.
Okay, so it come out the last round, and you know Leigh Wood is going for it. You know, he's not taking a back step. He's moving his feet really well to get into range, and he's throwing non-stop combinations. You know, he's like, I've got to get the combinations in. Obviously, controlled aggression, but really, it looked like he was picking some beautiful shots underneath Conlan's elbows into the body, and then coming from body up to head. So I could see, yeah, he's definitely going for the knockout. He's got a good strategy here. He is hurting this guy, because I'm seeing the energy literally just leaving Mick Conlan's body. I'm thinking to myself, this guy stopped fighting. He's literally just surviving now. And if Conlan if Wood gets the shot, he's gonna go. And lo and behold, I was like, wow. The shot that hit, you kind of like looked like he threw his hand and punched it through the back of his head. And I think if you look closely, how far does his hand land? Because I bet as he hits his face, he drives that hand and it goes through the rope. And this is something you teach boxers. I'm looking to drive your head from here to there. You know, I don't want to hit you and just stop. I want to hit you and push you with bad intentions all the way through the shot. And that's what that looked like. That looked like a heave punch to push him through the ropes, and it was just like, wow.
Yeah, and I remember when I saw it, I was at a nice little elevated angle. So I saw him obviously drop towards the ropes, and so I'm thinking, okay, he's about to tuck up, then he's going to do his clinch. Next thing I remember, all I saw was him dip down, and I saw the shot go straight, but it was like, obviously downwards trajectory, so you get more velocity and more torque on that shot. And the next thing, I just literally saw Conlan, like he was just flat on the ropes, like almost like a mannequin, just literally like he just motionless, almost like he needed the strings to start holding him up. And the next thing, bam, 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 ref can't get in time. fall through the ropes, like, and you see, and I saw him, like, I saw how he slid all the way back. Like, it was a lot worse than the Hopkins one, because he literally he slid like straight. It was a literal, like, it was like he was going down a slope. That's how his body just went. So I was like, "Ooh, that doesn't look good." Because especially the fact that he was knocked out like 3 punches before that even happened. He had no control of his body. So I was like, "Oh, yeah, that's it. It's over." And
Yeah.
the ref wasn't even going to say, "All right, you know what? It's the last round. Let's see if we give him the 20 seconds." And he was like, "Nah, it's over. It's done."
That was done. So yeah, I mean, what a great fight. As I said, an instant classic. For those who watched, obviously you got the benefit of being there live. Those are what we pay our money for, you know. After the debacle of refereeing and judging decisions last week before, we come back this week, and our love of the sport gets reinvigorated by these types of fights and this kind of matchmaking. So yeah.
Yeah, and obviously Leigh Wood done is specifically what every fighter says they need to do, which is take it out of the judges' hands to stop any kind of dodges. Because the other way, it would have had to be the same way with Conlan, to be fair. Because at the end, that coming up to that round, I would have had it even 6 rounds apiece. That's how I was scoring it, like when I was watching. So realistically, any decision that happened, I wouldn't have argued with. But yeah, that's how you make it conclusive. Like, you don't let anyone have an argument. It's done.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I do want to. If they run it back, I will be there for the rematch as well. 100%.
That would be a great fight, no doubt. Let's talk about. Bren's brought up a great point actually here. As Adam Booth lost the Jedi Force, did he ever have it?
He had it in the beginning because his style was. If you look at the style that he trained, like, let's be real, that wasn't really a UK based style, right? So guys didn't know how to. People didn't really know how to adjust to that because it was more sort of like elusive. It was more striking, electric, and compulsive. It was a bit more how you would have seen some of the more Americans or sort of fight. So in that sense, it was a case of, okay, people weren't really used to that sort of, that low crouch, that everything high intensity, explosive over here, but people started to learn. And I feel like as people started to learn, and he hasn't got people that are naturally as good as Groves was and as Hay was and whatnot, I just feel like it's not translating the same, and he can't adjust his own technique to become successful again. That's how I look at it.
So let's make a judgment. I mean, did he ever have it? Or I'm gonna say he didn't ever have it, because to me, he inherited 2 pedigrees. You know, if you get 2 pedigrees, you know, you don't really have to do a great deal. I mean, you know, I'm not saying he's a bad trainer, but what I'm saying is, you know, when you end up like with a fighter who is so technically gifted, your job is a lot easier.
That's true. I'll give you that.
As he
okay,
showed
it looked
himself
like
to
he
be
had it.
able,
Then it looked like he had it.
yeah, and when you look at Groves and you look at Conlan now, you kind of go, has he really got what it takes? Because there are certain trainers where you think, you know what, he would have changed something in that fight and got his fighter through the 12 rounds. Whereas he was unable to do that. And the same applies to Groves. You know, Groves is well up against Froch. We know that, you know, look, you've got the boxing capabilities. If you manage the ringmanship, yeah, the distance, you can control the rest of the fight and win it. But
Okay, I do partially agree with you on that. But I think the difference is with the knockdown from the 11th. I think that's what changed it. I don't even think it was Booth, because Booth said like control it, like stay engaged, like don't let him back into this. And to Conlan, he's thinking, damn, I've just been knocked down, I'm on a way turf, I have to make it conclusive. So I think that was more Conlan's choice than Adams, because I heard what Adam Booth was saying in the corner, and what he was saying was sound advice. He was telling him what to do, and he was doing it throughout the majority of the fight. But just towards the end, I think it was just a case of like Conlan just deciding, no, I have to make it conclusive. So in that one, I'll give him the grace. With the George Groves one, I mean, again, it was, look, Carl Froch is just attritional, like he's an attritional monster. You don't have an easy night, but we all know within that first fight, like it was stopped prematurely. Oh, read out the super chat.
Yes, yes, yes. We got a big up Danny Fight Fan TV with the super chat. Wood versus Conlan was defo worth the $7.99 alone, let alone the rest of the month's subscription. Big up Space and Pugilist. Everything great show, guys. So yeah,
thank you very much,
Dan, for that.
Yeah, so no, with obviously the Groves one, we can admit that it was stopped, like it was stopped prematurely, the first fight. Obviously, Booth wasn't in the corner for the second one, so we can't attribute that to him. But it was kind of, from Groves was a bit robbed in the first one, you could say, all right, the plan was still working at that particular time. So, you know, but yeah, you want to touch on some of the other matches on the undercard quickly?
Yeah, so the key support was the fight just
Kevin
prior was Terry Harper.
Oh no, Jarko was Kevin Jarko was a chief support.
Jarko, sorry, yeah,
against Rubio, but I don't remember his first name.
Yeah, so that ended up being a decent scrap. Although from what you're saying, the crowd were baying for that to just be over.
Yeah, because the thing is, here's what I'll say, and I don't want to dwell on this one too long. Like Kevin Jarko, like he's got a good style fundamentally. He actually reminded me a little bit of like a David Hay sort of with the movement I'm talking, and sort of the way that he was like striking, but everything for him was literally like power punch, like he wasn't setting anything up. So I feel like the guy was able to read most of what he was doing to be able to, you know, not take a lot of those flush. But Kevin was also getting hit way too much for someone who's supposed to be as good as he is. Like, and obviously part of that is obviously wanting to prove and sort of like steal the show and whatnot. But it just felt like he was rushing his work. He was very one-dimensional. He wasn't setting anything up, and he was just literally trying to go for highlight reel shots all night long, which made it a very boring fight because the crowd could see that, okay, this isn't really going anywhere. You have to switch it up, and you haven't learned to switch it off yet.
Yeah, I mean, the thing I would say is Rubio looks like, you know, a seasoned pro. You know, he's one of them guys that he knows his job. He knows that he's there to last the distance. He's not going to get knocked out. He never looked like he was ever going to get knocked out.
But he got knocked out in his last fight. That's the thing. He got knocked out in, like, I think it was 2 rounds or 3 rounds or something. It was a quick knockout. So
yeah,
Jarko is supposed to be a level above that guy.
I think they picked him because they thought that, you know, look, Jarko could potentially get him out of there. But for me, Rubio never looked at any point in time like he was in trouble. You know, there were rounds where he put himself on the front foot and said, you know what, I'm coming back at you. Jarko just looks a little bit too one-dimensional for me. You know, he lacks lateral movement. You know, you were saying about similarities with other fighters. Well, you know, for me, 2 upright, 2 center line, you know, but he got the job done. Let's give him credit for the fact that he gutted it out. He came up against a stiff, strong opponent, and he got the job done. But you know, this sport is about levels. There's a lot of levels above for him to experience, and we're going to need him to kind of improve in a lot of that of his areas for him to be able to compete at those different levels above.
Fully agree. Fully agree. So Harper was next. Harper against Berlanga. Obviously, that was supposed to be Harper against Hardy, which would have been for me a much more aesthetically pleasing fight. Because Heather Hardy, even though she was coming up from like much lower weight class, she's got the kickboxing background as well. She's tough, never been stopped, like always in fun fights. So, but I think that would have led more aesthetically to Harper maybe even being able to get a stoppage. So, but overall, what I will say, I think one thing that she done pretty well was she boxed well, she moved, and basically one thing, she started switching southpaw to protect her right hand. because it's the right hand that she broke twice over like the last year and a half, which is basically why she was out for so long before the Baumgardner fight. So the fact that she switched to southpaw so that she had that as more of a jab hand, not throwing it as heavy, and then using the left hand to maybe do the the power punching to sort of protect the right hand a little bit, I thought was very clever. And that was something that Steffi Ball implemented quite well. But it was a very comfortable fight for her. The girl was competitive, like she didn't give her an easy ride, but Harper definitely controlled that fight quite nicely.
Yeah. Not much more to say than what you said. I think you've put that one perfectly. The last fight I got on that card was Gary Cully, which I believe you didn't quite get to see.
I didn't. Yeah, I was going into the arena, and by the time I got in, I found that he just won by knockout, so I missed that fight.
Yeah, I mean Gary Cully to me represents he's a phenom because he is so long. He's a really
like
tall
6'2",
fighter
right?
for his weight. I didn't even know how tall he is, but
I think I heard he's 6'2".
Jesus,
6'2",
really?
135 pounds. Like,
yeah, that's just mad. But you look at his legs and you go, well, you see why he's where all that is. He's not got the biggest legs at all. But he did a decent job. He did really nicely. He picked some really nice shots. I was very much impressed by him. Obviously, his size is going to be an issue for anybody in that weight class because he's just got such long levers. He did pick beautiful shots and will be a trouble at some point to some people. So
yeah.
Gary Cully definitely one to look out for in the future, guys.
So the last one was Sandy Ryan and Erica Farias. Now we definitely have to talk about that. Now that fight was definitely an interesting fight going forward. Now I actually, again, on the video that I was supposed to do, I was saying basically I felt like it was a fight that if Ryan pulls it off, she's arrived, like she's ready. But this is a very hard fight for her to be taking so early in her career. Now the one thing I thought was okay, because she's a lot bigger than Erica, maybe that's gonna be an issue when it comes to that's going to be an issue when it comes to being in there with Sandy, because Sandy is obviously going to be the bigger girl. She's going to crowd her. She's going to get in on the inside. She's going to unleash those body shots, and it could be a wear out job. But remembering that Farias was actually like a 140 champion, so she's used to being at that weight, and she was not like scared whatsoever. So from the weigh-in, I saw how she was acting at the weigh-in, like fist up in her face and everything. I said, oh no, do you know what? I think she's gonna win this. Like she knows something that we don't. And that's literally she out hustled her, she outlanded her, she busted up her nose. Like she knew when to dive into the clinches, she knew when to take her breaks. Like she literally controlled the whole pace. And Sandy Ryan, who's a person who's normally quite good at being able to sort of like do the cradle and sort of get down low, because I've seen her spar. I've seen footage of her sparring like against guys and the way how she slipped shots, but she literally just stood upright and plodded forward thinking, I'm just going to be the bigger person and try to walk you down, a la like Tyson Fury against Steve Cunningham when he had to switch game plan. Like she did that not really needing to, but that just made her get picked off all night, like get bloodied up and just lose very comprehensively. Like the movement from Farias was of the levels of a champion, and remember she's a former 2-weight champion. She's not no little child. And when you look at saying, oh well, she's lost 5 fights, but 2 of those were to Jessica McCaskill, 1 was to Michaela Mayer, 1 was to Delphine Pursoon, and the other 1 was to Cecilia Breakhouse. Sandy Ryan's not on their level, so show this girl some respect. That's how I see it.
Definitely. Yeah, so once again, you've broken that excellently down for us. That again, bit of a shock, this, fight that night. But Farias, give her her flowers. She performed really well. She boxed beautifully, and in a very tough fight, came out the victor. So without further delay, let's move on. This weekend, we have Michael Magic Hands, the problem child McKinson, facing Virgil Ortiz. This looks like potentially a bit of a one-sided fight, but people who know Michael Mackinson will tell you it's not as straightforward as it looks.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
I mean, like you said, on paper, this is supposed to be like a dog walk. Like Ortiz is just supposed to like beat the stuffing out of Mackinson. However, I think the first half of this fight, because it's definitely going past 6 rounds no matter what happens. But the first half of the fight is going to be very competitive and very crafty. And I feel that Mackinson's going to surprise a lot of people. He's going to move well. And one thing that I've heard, and obviously I can't verify it, but I've heard other fighters say this, like even though he's only got 2 or 3 knockouts from his 20 fights or whatever, however many he's got, like people say that he actually hits a lot harder than you think. So when they taste the power, they're not as quick to want to rush in to try and get their work off because they realize that they got hurt from his shots. So if Ortiz does that, there could even be a point where maybe he gets buzzed early and has to shake that off, like because he says, "Oh, I don't believe this guy's got anything for me. Look at his KO." He might not even respect that that his hands are that decent. So he might literally move from boxer puncher to pressure fighter because he feels like, well, I just need to get to your range and then you're mine. Now, if Mackinson can keep up, I feel like if he can keep up a good pace, then the fight can either go the distance or he can last quite long in the fight. But I do ultimately think that Ortiz will get to him and cause him some problems, cause him some hassle, and probably get the victory. But I'm gonna be conservative and I'm gonna predict that Mackinson manages to go the distance and Ortiz gets maybe a very close decision fight, whether it's a split or an MD or something like that. That's how I kind of see it.
Yeah. So this one represents 2 body types for me. I mean, Mackinson is, I believe he's a smaller welterweight, and therefore he's coming in against a big guy. You know, Virgil Ortiz is a big guy at his weight. You know, technically, physically, sorry, he's gifted. He's, you know, very muscular. Obviously, throws amazing power in both hands. Has a great knockout record. So it kind of looks one way in terms of the way the fight goes. You know, the power man against the steady guy. But Mackinson is a southpaw. That could be an issue for Virgil Ortiz. And how will Ortiz deal with that steady work? You know, but he has shown his capabilities in the past to deal with tough guys. You know, he's got a very good pedigree. So this one looks a real difficult fight to pick. Silverstream or
Sylvester
Solomon, yeah, says this is going to be business as usual for Ortiz. Danny at Fight Fan says, I think Mackinson picks up quite a few of the early rounds, and also remember Mackinson drops most of these hidden opponents.
Most of his opponents.
Okay. He just
don't stop
KO them.
Yeah. So definitely hits harder than the record suggests.
Yeah. So just as you said, you know, he it's going to be one of them where we'll see, you know, can he deter Virgil Ortiz? Can he make Virgil Ortiz get on the back foot? Because I don't see Virgil Ortiz being nearly as effective on the back foot. So that's going to be part of the game plan. But this looks an interesting fight.
I'm looking forward to it, most definitely.
Who've we got on the undercard of that? We've got Ramla Ali.
Yeah, she's fighting a Canadian girl. What was her name? Sandra something. I was looking at this earlier on, actually. Let me check that real quick. Yeah, the girl, I know the girl's like she's like 5'6" 2 that's a record. No knockouts. I don't think she's been stopped either. Let me just double check that. But she's a Canadian, so they're normally quite tough. So Ramla Ali doesn't necessarily hit the hardest. So I
Mm,
think it's an 8 rounder. So I think it's going 8 rounds, to be totally
yeah,
honest.
yeah.
Shelley Barnett, that's who she's fighting. So yeah, eight
Uh-huh.
2-minute rounds. Um, I think that she lost the distance, but she'll win comprehensively because I think she's a bit taller than this her as well, which she always seems to be. So she'll be able to box from the outside. She's the
Okay,
classic pure boxer style.
cool. Cool. So that's the rest of that card doesn't look that interesting. Um, I can't think of any other fights on that card that really are catching me. Um,
Well, put it this way, we're gonna watch it. So if they do stand out, we'll talk about them next week.
exactly. So the other fight card, the two other fight cards I want to talk about this weekend. There's a show in Dubai. Saudi Arab Money. Arab
Okay.
Money is bringing boxing to Dubai. Sonny Edwards defending his title against Wasim. What's your thoughts on that one?
Right. Well, even though that's the he who shall not be named on this channel, um, his movement, I feel like that's gonna be an easy night's work for him. Like routinely, he's got some of the best feet in the game at the moment. Movement wise, I mean, not really got the pop, but I feel like he'll just make that an easy night's work. And with a lot of those fighters from sort of those regions, um, they're still in their infancy. So everything about them is crude. I haven't seen any of them with any sort of like super talent or sort of even potential. So I feel like it's a novelty fight in the sense that I think he's supposed to be the first UAE guy ever to be ranked like number 1 or ever to be a mandatory or something along those lines. There's some sort of angle towards the fight which makes it big in that territory. So I think it's
Mm,
literally going over there for a bit of sun and a bit of fun. To be, I can't really see there being any issues in that fight whatsoever.
okay. I'm going to agree with you on that one. That looks like a routine for me for Sonny Edwards. Interesting on the undercard of that doesn't seem. I've kind of only just realised it was taking place this week. Is Regis Prograis against Tyrone
McKenna.
McKenna? What's your thoughts on that one?
So I think it's supposed to be an 8 rounder. I'm hoping that it's better than that, to be honest. But if I'm gonna be real, like as we all know, like Regis Prograis is probably he's guaranteed a top 5 in the 140 division. Like I don't think that's in anyone's question at the moment, even with some of the 135s possibly about to come up. I feel that since his fight with Taylor, his career has been managed horribly. Like he hasn't had any of the decent fights he's deserved. His talent deserves like big, not even necessarily big money, but at least sort of either big name or profile building fights that lead him back to those titles. I just haven't seen him have much there. I think obviously part of that is to do with who his promoter was at the time. I just don't think he was able to get him some of those shots. But yeah, he's really just been treading water. And no disrespect to Tyrone McKenna, but he will get dog walk. That is going to be an easy night's work unless Regis decides to just go round for the experience.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
So again, you and I, we kind of agree on that one. Regis Prograis' career has stalled massively. Brennan's just literally just put in what I just said. It's time for him to wake up from his slumber and let loose and come back into the fold because, considering where he's been, he needs to come back. Danny says Prograis needs to fight Jose Ramirez at some point when the belts get vacated.
That would
And
be a
that would
good
be a
fight.
good shout. That would be a
Yeah.
good fight, definitely. Ramirez looked good coming back the other day. So, yeah, definitely that would be one to look forward to.
Mm.
What else have we got this weekend?
I
Edgar.
think isn't that it? Oh,
No, we
Berlanga.
got
Oh,
Edgar Berlanga.
against
We did
Steve
our
Rose.
homework, boys. We did our homework. Fight fans, we brought the whole world of boxing into the show.
I
Edgar
almost forgot
Berlanga is
about that
coming
one.
on.
Jeez. What's your thoughts on that?
So let me just remind myself on this one.
Steve Rose, 21-1.
Steve Rose, that's right. Steve Rose is no gimme. Steve Rose is a very good stand-up fighter, very, very technically, very gifted. I've seen him fight before and always thought, yeah, he's a good reader of a fight, and he's definitely not going to be an easy a fight for Edgar Berlanga.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, people will look at the Golovkin fight and just think, oh, this guy's just some any bum. But no, like, even though Golovkin should have never picked him as an opponent, like Rose is actually credible. Like he's a classic pure boxer, but he's actually the way he actually sets up shots like incredibly well. His combination punching, he manages to find the target like quite a lot. And even though his like he hasn't necessarily got the largest knockout percentage, like you can tell that he puts people he puts his hands together and he wins comfortably against a lot of his opponents. Even though I'm not going to say he's fought the best of the best, but a lot of the Canadian fighters have that issue where the only time that they get to come out of Canada is to fight like a killer, and then they end up looking sort of less than. And then when they're back there, they don't really get the same level of quality and standard of opponent. But a lot of them they've got deep amateur backgrounds. A lot of them are former Olympians, and like Steve Rose is no exception. So I can see him basically making that a horrid fight for Berlanga, whose knockout streak has all of a sudden mysteriously disappeared as soon as he stepped up. Steve Rose could legit win this fight, provided it's scored fairly. that's how I'll put it. If it's scored fairly, he's in with a real shout. If it's not, then it could be an injury. It could be a very comfortable on the scorecards type fight for Berlanga, even though we'll look at it and say, nah, it wasn't that comfortable.
Yeah. So that wraps up the boxing action that we're going to see this weekend. For those of you who like to have a flutter, you've heard our views on the upcoming fights. Hopefully, good luck if you're having a little
cheeky bet.
Little cheeky one. I know Danny Fight Fan likes to do a little ninefold every now and again. We've got some nice ones to go for this weekend. Boxing action that has been happening this week. We want to touch base on a couple of things. So, literally, base. Let's talk about this little gem that popped up today in my feed.
Right.
Terence Crawford came out yesterday and indicated in an impromptu interview that his top 5 pound-for-pound boxers right now include himself, Canelo Alvarez, Alexander Usyk, Inoue, and Errol Spence. That's his top 5. No room for the Gypsy King.
Well, look, you already know what my opinion is on like career heavyweights being in the quote unquote pound for pound list. I don't think, if you look at it in the sense of if they're all the same size with the same abilities, same like heights, no issue, weights, no issue. There are people that are much more technically gifted and more skilled and seasoned than a lot of the heavyweights out there. The heavyweights normally get it just by the fact they've got the punching power. So him not being in that top 5, I ain't got any issue with that. I don't put heavyweights in there if they're career heavyweights. However, if they come up through the weights, like heavyweights, cruiserweights, bridgerweights, if we're gonna claim them as well, yeah, they to me get in there because they're not career heavyweights. They've actually had they've literally been the definition of what pound for pound is. Like they've gone up to the heavyweights division and taken them out. That's how I look at it. Now, in terms of his list, I mean, apart from Spence, I can't argue, but I know why Spence is in there, because he has to obviously make that. It's still his big money fight. He has to make Spence be relevant to some degree. If you don't have Spence in there, then even if you didn't have him in like the top 10, if he beats Spence in a hypothetical fight, say they ever do, do actually get in the scrap together, he doesn't get any. He won't get any plaudits for it, because, well, who's Spence? Like, Spence isn't all that. He's not considered one of the best in the game, so you have to put him in there.
Yeah, so for me, this is worthy of an episode all on its own. So maybe we might come back to this. What defines a pound for pound fighter? Because you can't have 2 fights in 2 years, and albeit one of them was a classic, yeah, but you can't come with that and have a pedigree of literally one fighter. Yeah, because your pedigree is based on fighting one guy 3 times. Klitschko is too old to go to too older and a fight. You know, it was a great fight at the time, but let's be honest, that fight is so old now, it's ancient history.
Yeah,
there are boxing fans today who don't even know that fight. Yeah, so you have to be current. You have to look and say, right, last year's work, and put that into context. Yeah. I'm only just pushing a little bit extra to say, all right, well, the year before you had another decent fight. But let's be honest, pound for pound is current fighters. You ain't fought sufficiently against sufficient level of opposition, because bearing in mind, you beat the same guy 3 times. Yeah. It don't make that pound for pound worthy.
Especially if that guy wasn't already on the pound for pound list or spoken about on that pound for pound list. So you can't beat that guy and then jump onto the list. So yeah, I mean, I agree with that.
Yeah.
But we can look at any week where there's not a huge amount of boxing going on, we can maybe break that down and talk about that, because that is the episode of the show, the breakdown. That's what we do. We'll break it all down.
Yeah. So that's very interesting, that one. Let's talk about another little thing that popped up last 24 hours, 48 hours. Little spat took place the other day, or just
it was yesterday, wasn't it?
Yesterday on Twitter, between Joyce and AJ. This was comic for me. I actually laughed when I saw what Joyce was putting up. What did he call him? He called
glass cannon.
Glass cannon. Oh man, I just had to laugh because, there are people who will say, and I know if Maestro is watching, our good friend from New York City, Maestro, he's a big fan of Joyce. But let's be honest, AJ schools Joyce. He schooled him as an amateur. He schooled him as a pro in amateur training. When he was a pro, he was sparring Joyce for his Olympics.
He sparred him for the Dubois fight as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So this just, to me, Joyce is getting out of his comfort zone and trying to make himself relevant.
I mean, look, the thing is, I like Joyce a lot more than I think a lot of people do, right? I don't necessarily think he's one of the best, but his engine is unquestionable. Obviously, he's got the chin. Like, we do know that, he can be hurt, but for the most point, like, he's actually able to sort of brace and sort of evade a lot of shots or roll with them so that he doesn't take the full impact. To the body seems to be a different story, because we saw the Bryant Jennings fight. Even Takam sort of was having a bit of success to the body as well. But with Joyce, like I've always said, his single punches are slow, but his combinations always seem to hit the target, and his feet are actually a lot quicker than people give him credit for. He always manages to get into range to punch before someone can move out of range. Like, he's actually a lot quicker than people think. It's just that his single punches are so slow looking that everyone assumes everything else is slow. That being
Yeah.
said, like I saw those sparring footage, the sparring footage between them. Now, yeah, they're not going full pelt, they're not doing whatever, but even for him trying to get into range of Joshua, who, bear in mind, is the same height, leaner frame, probably a bit more flexible in terms of, even though obviously Joyce does capoeira and stuff, but in terms of just his natural mechanics, his body's a bit more sleek and slender, so it lends itself to a bit more fluidity in his movement. Like he was just making Joyce look silly throughout that whole thing. I can only imagine what he'll do in a proper ring with the 8 or the 10 ounce gloves on,
Gloves, yeah.
and the no head guard, and literally he's like, okay, well, I've got to get this guy out quick, because if I don't, like he's got a better gas tank than me. I can't afford to take the rounds off because he will just keep coming towards me. So it would be a bad night. I feel it would be a bad night for Joyce. It would definitely, I feel, end within 5 rounds if that fight ever happened. And if you look at Joyce, let's be real, like, don't get me wrong, Joyce is good, right? But his best wins are Takam and Dubois, right? Dubois, who was a novice prospect, he was talked up big by Frank Warren because Warren had no one else at that time and he had to talk about him. And then Carlos Takam, who obviously was a former shell of himself, but was still good enough to put in that work. And again, he gets stopped questionably in a fight that he was winning at the time. To a point where he pushed the ref afterwards, like, why, like, what are you doing? Kind of thing. So, when you look at the body of work, it would be good if he was still being classed as a prospect coming up, but now people are talking about him as a contender, and the level isn't, it's not where it needs to be to think that you're on that level yet. There's no one on your resume that shows you that, boy, like, yeah, you could be serious work for that former world heavyweight champion.
Yeah, totally agree. So just finishing up, there's some comments in the group about this particular subject. Man says, Skoda engine is unquestionable, but doesn't make it a good car. You need the whole package.
True.
Londoner in the sticks, welcome to the chat. Even this current mentality, fragile, low risk taker for maximum coin chasing version of AJ will run through slow Joyce. I totally agree. Joyce from Silver Salomon. Joyce gives a lot of heavyweights problems. People forget he damaged Daniel's eye with just his jabs.
Again, but novice prospect.
Yeah. And to be honest, I think people are overrating Triple D now. It really, we're putting too much stock into that win. Bafor says, people think Joe Joyce beats Dillian White. Fools, bruv. And man says, I hope the fight happens in Nigeria. Both of them have got Nigerian heritage. So, yeah, that would be a great advert for boxing if it could go international and take that fight to Nigeria. There's plenty of people there who got sufficient funds to be able to make that a fight over there. Listen, the hour's gone.
Oof. Time flies when you're having fun.
See what happens when you're having fun. We could go on and on, but yeah, guys, I appreciate your time this evening. It's been very educational, very fun. Base.
Listen, ladies and gentlemen, again, this is the inaugural episode of The Breakdown. It will be happening every Tuesday, live, 8 p.m. Regardless of if Man United is playing or not, I will still be here, unlike KG. That's right, I said it. Listen, please, everyone, please press the like button, subscribe if you're not already subscribed, share the video so we can, so everyone else can watch it back afterwards. Let's just sort of get this one trending out as well, just so we can keep growing the community. We're here because we are the great defeaters, just like you lot. We're no different. We love what the channel stands for, what it represents, just like everyone else. And we're here to try and make the best content we can at the moment. Like, help us along the journey. If you got there's any comments or stuff that you want to tell us, put it in the chat and we'll respond. I might respond on my main channel, but I will definitely be in the chat interacting with you. Just to let you know, for anyone who doesn't know, my channel is BaseDaKid, as you can see on the screen. And then if you just type that in, you should find it. But it's the Hardcore Casual. That's the name of the show that I do on there. I'm on episode 56 right now, and I do some stuff with the women as well that I've just started up. So like, please support that. Support Tony. Like, tell them what you're doing, Tony, because you're always on nice podcasts and that. Give them the shout out.
Well, I'm a little bit different. I spread myself across a lot of platforms. I'm also doing football. I'm doing education. I'm doing lots of different things at different times. But you can catch me at Pugilist Boy on Twitter, on YouTube, and on Instagram at Pugilist Boy.
You can catch me at BaseDaKid on Instagram. You can type in BaseDaKid on Twitter as well, but it's B_A_S_S_E if you want to find me that way. And yeah, ladies and gentlemen, first episode of The Breakdown's down, and we are out. Thanks for watching.
Take care.